The opposite of addiction is connection. And for me, this Fishing for the Truth is about just that. In this two-part conversation, I'm sitting down with the immensely talented Nick Hayes. Actor, singer, dancer, his work has not only taken him around the world, but has also seen him perform on London's West End stages and work in television and film. Nick bared his soul to me and spoke so openly and so honestly about his journey from addiction to recovery and sobriety. I really feel there are vital pieces of information in these two parts that have the power to help people out there. Podcasts are becoming increasingly popular now, enabling people to listen while they carry on with their day-to-day tasks. But until I'm able to convert my videos into podcasts, I would urge that if you can't watch them, then please listen and put them on in the background. I feel they're going to be beneficial not only to people like myself who need to know more and need to understand more that active addiction is an illness and a disease, but also beneficial to those out there who may know someone who is struggling, or indeed someone watching this right now who is in trouble. So please watch, listen, and then share so that Nick's words can reach more people. Thank you.
This is my truth. Tell me the truth. Tell me my truth. Tell me what the truth feels like. This is my truth.
Thank you, lovely Nick, for welcoming me to your gorgeous home.
Such a pleasure, welcome.
It's lovely, really nice.
The Pimlico Palace.
Really nice vibe. I like your rosary on the thermostat.
Yeah, doing my best, you know. Higher power and all of that.
So, what I will start by saying is that about a year or two ago, I was on Facebook and I saw one of your statuses that you posted about celebrating your sobriety and how long it had been. And in that moment, two things happened for me in very short succession. First of all, I was really shocked and surprised, and then a nanosecond later, I had the realization that disease and addiction doesn't discriminate. So why should I be shocked? And I don't know why I was shocked, but I was. I thought, what? How? And yeah, it was a real moment of realizing that it doesn't discriminate. So that's what you're so kindly talking to me about today, about your journey, finding your way to nearly what were you saying, December the 11th, 3 years?
Yeah, December the 11th, I'll be 3 years sober, clean and sober.
So, gosh, where to start? So, what was are we talking alcohol and...
alcohol, cocaine, crystal methamphetamine.
Right, okay.
Methadone, GHB.
Okay.
God, I've never actually spoken specifically about the actual drugs that I was using, so...
Are you okay with that?
Yeah, totally,
okay.
yeah, absolutely. I replaced over the years, like, if I wasn't using something, I would kind of pat myself on the back and then just move to something else.
Okay.
So I'd say that my addiction actually started with weed.
Okay.
I smoked cannabis from about the age of 14 to 22.
Okay.
And then I kind of, I'd always drunk from when I was really young, and always drunk excessively.
When you say really young, what?
I think that, like, the first time I remember actually getting drunk was when I was about 13.
Okay.
13. And it was on White Lightning, and I blacked out. And I was very sick, and I was like, give me more.
Okay.
Because instantly I didn't feel anxious, and I didn't feel different, and I could talk to people.
Okay.
I grew up from a very, very young age feeling like I was different. Like I was kind of on the outside looking in. I lived very much in a fantasy world. daydreamt a lot and kind of always looking for ways to escape from reality, I think.
Okay.
And I can't say that there was anything really specifically traumatic that happened in my childhood. I had a really good upbringing. My parents are incredible. Other than, you know, the realisation that I was gay, and going through that, which actually, you know, later on turned out to be quite a significant factor in the manifestation of my addiction.
Okay.
But initially, you know, I had a good upbringing. I was just anxious. I just had tantrums. I just couldn't really deal with emotion.
Right.
So I would freak out if I was angry or sad or too happy. It would all just became overwhelmed. So
anything extreme, be it positive or negative?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So I would find that excitement would really quickly turn to anxiety.
Okay.
It still does. So, I mean, I'll get onto recovery later, but really my recovery has been a process of learning how to process and deal with emotions.
Right.
From then, once I started, I couldn't stop.
Okay.
I would go until I blacked out or puked.
Okay.
So I think I built quite a constitution from early on, you know, like I would drink a lot and I kind of trained my body to be able to drink a lot. I think my behaviour in other areas as well, even eating, and you know, I was always excessive. It was always like all or nothing.
Right.
So when I was about 14, I tried pot for the first time, and I was like, this is great because on the nights that I don't drink, I can just smoke.
Right. So there's always something.
Always something.
Okay.
So I smoked weed pretty much every day from the time I tried it. I was like, this is great. So I always had a little stash. That took me the whole way through college. I would find that in times that I wouldn't be able to drink due to work or something coming up, I would have, it was like my backup. I would turn to weed.
Okay.
I'd be like, oh, it's fine because I can just have a spliff tonight.
Yeah.
You know, not thinking about the fact that that was still getting me high.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So then when I hit about 22, I fell into a really deep depression. And I kind of come to understand now that it was actually cannabis induced.
Right.
I was smoking so much of it. I was also I was in a really like high pressure job in London, in the West End. I was on standby for a lead role and I was thrown on last minute. And so I couldn't drink alcohol, so I was going back and smoking weed every night, but smoking like loads of it to get me to sleep. I just couldn't stand the pressure. And then
would you wake up feeling when you smoke that much? How do you feel when you wake up? Okay.
I would wake up and smoke.
Right.
It would be the first thing I would reach for. So I'd get up, I'd take a shower, I'd sit on the sofa and smoke a joint with my breakfast.
Right.
I would wake up just racked with anxiety.
Okay.
So it would just be the first thing that I would do. It would set me up for the day. I'd be like, right, cool, now I feel normal.
Yeah.
You know, and I think after smoking it for so long, it kind of had the reverse effect. Like when I smoked a spliff, I'd feel normal. And when I didn't smoke it, I would just be a ball of anxiety.
Right.
So I couldn't really accept that it was a problem. I went through a period of depression and I went back to my parents in Bournemouth and went to see a doctor. And the doctor asked me if I was smoking weed and I said no. I lied to him.
Did you take yourself to see a doctor? Did anybody over this period of time?
It was my family. They were like,
say to you?
You need to see someone. Like I'd been in this depression for a period of maybe a couple of months.
Okay, so they'd noticed.
Yeah, I became quite agoraphobic. You know, I couldn't leave the house. I was super down.
Right.
Isolating. You know. So the doctor prescribed me some antidepressants, which kind of kick-started me out of the depression. but I carried on smoking weed. When I stopped, I actually made a conscious decision to stop.
Okay.
I stopped and it was like waking up. I was like, oh, I'm fine again, like I'm okay. I kind of came out of the depression. So I knew then really that it was because of the amount of dope I was smoking that I'd fallen into this depression. I then replaced it straight away. I went straight back into drinking.
Okay.
And I found then, work started to come again because I was well again. I wasn't in depression. I was able to go back to auditions. And I managed to bag quite a high-profile job, earning some good money.
Right.
Which led me to cocaine.
Okay.
So I replaced weed with coke.
Right.
And that kind of opened up a lot of doors for me because I was like, oh, I'm not in bed all day sleeping.
Yeah.
I'm able to do shit and I can drink more because I can take cocaine and then drink more.
Right.
But obviously that can only last a certain amount of time before it goes very wrong.
Was it something you did just on your own, or was it something you did socially and...
It started off socially.
Right.
I'd say everything started off socially, and then after a period of a few months, it would just gradually kind of get more and more me doing it on my own until it was just me doing it on my own.
Right.
All of the drugs that I took over the years, whichever one I was into at the time, it would take hold quite quickly.
Right. Okay.
I think because of who I am, what is addiction? What makes an addict? I think I've spent the past 3 years kind of picking it apart. I think it's a bit of nature, a bit of nurture. I think it's a bit of everything.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I didn't feel enough.
Okay.
I didn't feel like a complete person, like a whole person.
Mm.
And so I needed to use, or I attempted to use external things to fill myself up.
Yeah.
To feel complete.
Yeah.
So, like the process of getting sober really is learning to like yourself, learning to love yourself.
Yeah.
So that you don't need anything else.
Yeah.
A tricky one.
Gosh. So that period of time where you started using cocaine more and more and more,
Mm-hmm.
then what? How long did you stay in that kind of phase for?
Until my money ran out.
Okay. Right.
So I was living in a flat in London. Back at this point, it was still quite rock and roll.
Mm-hmm.
Or I thought I was. I would have friends over and we'd be in the flat for days making music and reading scripts and writing things and doing
so it's not like you're being unproductive or... Well...
Yeah,
I realise that kind of productiveness...
Back then, not as much.
Right.
But we would kind of spend days getting high, doing lots of drugs. But it would always end badly. Like gradually, people would leave, and it would just be kind of me on my own. And so I'd call a dealer, and then the dealer would come over, and it would just end up like me and a dealer or whatever.
Right.
So I figure like over the years my using was always in like episodes and in binges.
Okay.
So like a lot of people talk about how they could manage life and kind of control, hold jobs down and things like that. Like I couldn't really with my using and drinking because I would binge for like a period and then be sober for a period.
Right.
Or like I'd do like a week where I'd be fine and I'd go to the gym and I'd drink smoothies and I'd be like, hey everyone, look how okay I am, I'm fine.
Yeah.
And then I'd spend a week in my flat using and drinking.
Okay.
So I think it was partly to hide it. as a way to hide it, you know, it was like people only ever saw me, you know, friends and family, and apart from like my really close family, people only ever saw me in the good bits.
Right.
And I made sure that people only ever saw those good bits.
Yeah.
Because then I could get away with the weeks, you know,
Right.
locked in on my own using drugs.
So I know this is going to sound completely naive, but so you're aware enough during these cycles of binges, and you're aware of what you're
I think I'm
doing and the cover up and the...
I think so. It's like...
That might sound really stupid, but I
No,
just
I
don't
know
know
exactly
whether when
what you
you're in
mean.
it you realise exactly
I did.
how calculating
I
you
did,
is.
but I was lying to myself about it. Like,
Okay.
underneath, I knew. I
Okay.
knew that there was something wrong, and I knew I could see by this point that that it was not normal, that other people weren't doing this.
Right.
So I made a bit of an identity out of it as well. Like, on one job, everyone called me Shitface Hayes because I was always shit-faced. Like, and I was
Okay.
like, I'm the party guy, I'm the fun guy. Like, come to me if you want a good time,
Yeah.
you know. But I knew something was wrong probably from about the age of 15, 16.
Wow, okay.
I was like,
That early.
yeah, I knew that I didn't drink like other people.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, for me, like, I am an alcoholic, I'm a drug addict. My alcoholism, it is not about, it's not about how much I drink and how frequently I used to drink.
Okay.
It was about the way that I drank and the way that I used.
Right.
So, for instance, I would go to a bar and if I was getting people around or something, I would buy everybody a drink and I'd buy myself two, and I'd sneak off into the corner and down one before I went back.
Right.
You know, like,
Yeah.
I thought everyone did that. I
Really?
thought that was normal.
Okay.
You know, or like having, you know, sneakily getting a shot and like taking it, or like stealing a bottle of something from behind a bar and like running off to the toilet and downing it, seeing if I could drag a friend with me and like get them in on it.
Right.
Now I look back, there were so many times where friends were like, Nick, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You know, even if I was like kind of out on a night out and buying drugs, I would, you know, we'd all put our share in, our money in for the drugs or whatever, and I would steal it. I would steal some and keep it in my wallet, knowing that I would need it for later.
Right.
You know, there was this kind of this fear of losing it, of not having enough. Like,
Yeah.
and you know, that fear of not having enough, that fear of not being enough, manifested itself for me in alcoholism and drug addiction.
Right. So when did it... So your really close family who did see you, not necessarily when you were fine, in inverted commas, how... I'm guessing you've spoken about it since your recovery, but how was it for them during that time? Were they acutely aware of...
Yeah, I think that they certainly knew I was different.
Okay.
A bit of a weirdo for a long time before it got bad, but what it kind of, it bred this like sort of unhealthy relationship with my parents, because they became super worried about me all of the time. So it would be a very close relationship. They needed to know where I was all the time. You know, they would be kind of mollycoddle me, and because
did that
they
make
felt
you...
they needed to.
Yeah.
Because I was clearly something was a bit off. Something was a bit wrong.
Yeah, and instinctively that's what they're going to do, isn't it? Want to just...
Yeah, and so, you know, what has been really difficult, and in my amends during my recovery, has been looking back, seeing how much I manipulated people close to me and loved ones in order to get drugs and alcohol.
Right.
Or money for drugs and alcohol. Because truly that was my only goal.
Okay.
That was everything. When I look back, my whole life was built around the obtaining of alcohol or drugs,
Okay.
and how I could get it and how quickly I could get it and how much of it I could get.
Okay.
So, you know, every job I did, everything was just, it really ran my life. You know, not in direct ways, in kind of indirect ways. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
how did you manage to? Because you're super, super talented. I can't imagine the demands that are put on us in theatre, in performing. I mean, how did you manage to work? And
well, I'd say that the only times that I felt well were when I was working, or when I was on stage, or when I could perform. And the dangerous thing about that is we're not working all the time.
Yeah.
So I can't put my wellness and my well-being into what I do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because when it would be taken away from me, or when I'd finish a contract, I would end up just go picking straight up.
Yeah.
Drugs would I'd be like, right, straight away. What we do, our industry kind of fed it, you know,
Right.
And
we were talking about that anyway before, weren't we? About how, and I was talking about it in a chat that I did with Sophia, about how even without the addiction or the disease or the illness, even in general, what this business does a lot of the time is define how people feel about themselves. And that's without that extra massive layer that we're talking about today. So...
and I think it's, you know, I think my relationship with my work has become a lot healthier since sobriety.
Okay.
Because being on stage and performing is not dislike being high on drugs.
Okay.
You know, so I treated my work as I did drugs and alcohol. Like I was obsessed with it.
Right.
I had this obsession with being on stage. It was like I would step on stage. First of all, the anxiety of being able to get on stage, and then I'd step on stage and be like, and it would be the same as if I was waiting to meet a dealer to pick up drugs, and I would get the drugs and take the drugs and breathe.
That's so interesting.
So really, there's been a huge shift with me, with my professional life, because my whole relationship with my work now has to be different. And when I recognise these kind of patterns coming up in behaviour, these addictive patterns, I'm like, that's not healthy, that's not right, like I can't do that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it allows me to have more respect for my work. It's just a lot healthier.
Right.
Not to define myself by what I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
It's like sobriety has allowed me to find out who I am outside of that, outside of alcohol, drugs, and performing.
Outside of anything external.
Yeah.
Just you.
Yeah.
Nice. That's so interesting. So was there a pivotal moment? Was there a cliche rock bottom? What led you to recovery and to seeking help?
So I had a best friend of mine who I owe a lot of my recovery to.
Okay.
Took me to my first meeting. I think it was about 2014 or 2013, 14.
Okay.
I was having a bit of a rough time in London. I'd known everybody could see that I was a bit off the rails here and there for like periods of time.
Yeah.
My parents are just incredible, so supportive, but they, you know, I was kind of going back to theirs to use it as a bit of a rehab.
Okay.
So like if I would have periods of time where I just needed to like chill out, I'd go back there and, you know, recover at home. So they were like, we have to deal with this, you know, like I would go back home and just be like, oh, I come down or super angry or pissed off at them. So my relationship with them was really under a lot of stress. And
did they know what you were taking or using, or did they know the extent of it?
No, I don't. I don't think they did then.
You hadn't. I don't know why I think you would, but you hadn't told them.
No, and also I was very good at manipulating and fobbing it off as I have mental problems. I have issues. I have,
Okay.
you know, like, I'm the victim. You don't understand how I feel and what I'm going through because of my depression, because of da-da-da, because of da-da-da.
Right.
You know, really taking drugs and alcohol out of the equation.
Okay.
I am crazy, but I'm not that crazy. You know what I mean? Like, we're all a bit crazy.
I was going to say, isn't everybody though?
Yeah, totally.
Isn't that the glorious
but
thing about
you
it?
know, at the time I was like, I just have, I had the doctor that I'd spoken to when I was taking a lot of weed that put me on antidepressants. I don't know if it was a diagnosis as such, but on that day he was like, I think we're dealing with a bipolar disorder.
Okay.
And he was, I remember him saying, we might need to explore borderline personality and putting you on lithium and da-da. I was like, oh my god, like, I'm crazy. Yeah. At the past 3 years not being on taking alcohol or drugs, turns out I'm alright.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like, I didn't know how I was.
Yeah.
Because since the age of 14, I've been using something.
Yeah.
I've been altering my mind in some way.
And also from such a a
A
pivotal
formative-
part of your development.
Yeah, totally. So all through my teenage years, I was using and drinking.
It's hard enough to know who you are at the best of times
Right.
when you're at that age.
So to cloud it with, you know, substance that is mind altering,
Yeah.
meant that I never really had a chance to level out.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of feel like a toddler at the moment. I'm like 3 years in and I feel like my brain is still leveling out. I'm kind of finding some consistency for the first time ever, really. What was your question?
Sorry, about was there a
yes,
was
rock
there a bottom?
Yeah, there was. So sorry, I'm just like spilling it all.
That's good. That's good. Thank you. That's what we're here for.
So what happened? I went to my first meeting. I walked into the.
Did you want to go to the meeting, by the way? Like, when you say someone took you to
No.
Isn't that a bit...
And my friend knocked on the door. I was having
It's not like you've chosen to go.
No, I was having a tantrum. My friend knocked on the door. It was around Christmas time. I always kind of struggle just before Christmas.
Right.
And I couldn't put up the tree. I was staying at my ex's flat in London. I couldn't put up the tree, and I was about to kick the tree down.
Okay.
Like I was going nuts.
Yeah.
My friend knocked on the door and I answered it, and he was like, hey, do you want to come to a meeting? I'm just on my way to one. And I was like, what, you think I need a meet? Yes, alright.
You said yes.
I was like, okay, fine, I'll go. I was like, I'm an actor, it'll be an exercise. I can just, you know, like, I'll learn something from it and da-da-da. I think something deep inside
I was
me
going to
was
say,
like,
there's got to be a reason why you said yes.
yeah, there was
Otherwise
this
you'd-
kind of inner voice that was like, you need to go to this meeting. Just
Yeah.
for the record, when I talk about meeting, I'm talking about a 12-step program.
Okay, yes.
So a fellowship of people that come together
Yeah.
to share and talk about their problems,
Okay,
which has kind of been the crux of my recovery.
right.
So I went to this meeting and I sat in this meeting, and I was like, this is ridiculous. I was like, these
Okay.
people are not like me. I was like, it's very sweet that they're all decided to come together, bless them. I was
Yeah.
like, you know, all of these, like my ego was just out of control. I was just these thoughts of grandiosity. I was like, I'm not as bad as these people.
Well, you hadn't at that point even identified the fact
No.
or accepted the fact that you had...
No, I hadn't even come close to surrender or
Yeah.
acceptance. And so it took about 2 years of meetings on and off, kind of dipping my toe in. I'd never share.
Oh, so you went back again and...
I did go back again, and I sometimes went on my own.
Ah, okay.
I didn't tell anyone.
Right.
And if I did go, I'd usually leave early and I'd sit at the back.
Mm-hmm.
And in my head, honestly, I was like, this is an acting exercise.
Okay.
I was like, I'm gaining experience here, I'm drawing from life.
Right.
I was like, I'm going to use all of this. You know, these rooms are spiritual foundation of this fellowship is anonymity, and at one point I was like, I'm going to record them and write monologues, you know, like, please. I was just, yeah, I just didn't, I was like, I'm not the same as these people.
Right.
So, cut to, I had a period of sobriety. I got into a relationship and had a period of sobriety during that relationship.
Okay.
I used this person as my higher power and became dependent on this person.
Right. So again, replacing it.
Yeah, replacing it totally.
Person.
Instead of drugs, I had a human, and I was like, oh,
okay,
cool. That's my new drug.
How long was that period of sobriety for?
That lasted about 2 months, I think, nearly 3 months.
Right.
And that was the longest that I did it on my own.
Yeah.
I say on my own. I was using somebody, but without a program or without, you know, a 12-step. And then, of course, we broke up.
Right.
And so did my sobriety.
Yeah.
And that's when it really, really spiraled downwards.
Okay.
At the time, I won't go into too many specifics about this, but at the time in London, there were 3 specific drugs that were quite prevalent among the gay community.
Okay.
And were used at, you know, gatherings in houses and stuff. And it's kind of become a bit of an epidemic over the past decade.
Okay.
Among young gay men.
Right.
It's like a perfect storm of the shame and these specific drugs that, you know, feel like they're covering it up. The chance to connect with other gay men. You know, at the time that it was, everything about it was just this perfect storm. And so I think there's a lot of guys my age that are still suffering, and that suffered during this time that are now in recovery.
Right.
So with my tendencies from an early age of addiction and, you know, knowing who I was, then this happening, it was like I just jumped head first. Yeah. The drugs got harder. I started using crystal methamphetamine and GHB, which is, you know, killing people on a nightly basis here in London. So by this point, my using had turned abusive. Like I was using to harm myself. I wasn't using then for a good time. You know, I was like using as much as I could I knew that I was sick and making myself sicker. Right.
Did you want to be sick? As in,
what
was...
I was just stuck. I was trapped in this cycle, and I didn't know how to get out.
Right.
I couldn't see a way out.
Yeah.
I came back to London, and I was staying on and off with an ex, but at times I slept in alleyways off Tottenham Court Road.
Okay.
Slept in people's front porches. I would go on apps and meet different people, stay out for nights on end, sometimes days on end. The experiences that I was having and the danger that I was courting was getting darker and darker.
Right.
And this happened over a period of maybe 3 months, to the point where I knew that I was, you know, I was going to seriously harm myself or not come out of it.
Okay.
And then I had this really weird night where I was on like, I think day 4 I'd stopped using. I'd done my last shot of GHB, and I had enough, and I dropped to my knees and I was like, help me.
Right.
I was like, I don't know what to do, and I prayed. I was just like, I need help, I don't know what to do. And And at this point as well, like I was such a skeptic. Like I had zero spirituality. I was like spiritually null and void.
Right.
If someone even mentioned like God or a ghost or anything that I couldn't see and didn't have proof of, I was like angry about it, you know, like a real skeptic. And the deeper I got into addiction, the more of a skeptic I became. But for some reason, on this night, when I was super down, I got on my knees and I prayed. And then I opened my laptop and I Googled help. Rehabs India, rehabs Thailand, like just going through these lists. I think in my head I was like, I just need a retreat. I just need to go to do some yoga for a month, go travelling, and then I'll be fine. I can come back and have a glass of wine and it'll all be fine again. So still at this point I hadn't accepted.
Yeah, still no sense of exactly what it is that you're dealing with.
No, I hadn't. I think partly because I didn't understand it. Like I didn't understand that firstly it even was a disease and what the disease was and how do you know if you have it, you know?
Yeah.
And I'd heard these things in these rooms, so seeds had been planted, but I just didn't really understand it. I just knew that I needed help.
Yeah.
So I Googled this place in Thailand and it was called Serenity Rehab Koh Samui. It's now called Siam.
Okay.
And it's in Chiang Rai, so they moved it from Koh Samui. I wrote them a message. You could write an email on their website, and I wrote them a message saying, I need help. I don't know what to do. Can you help me? I didn't really give it was probably a bit incoherent. But within 2 minutes, one of the guys, a receptionist at the rehab, called me back.
Wow.
Called me on my phone. It was like 3 a.m. or something, and I was like, my phone's ringing, it's a weird number. I was like, this can't be them. And I answered the phone, and he was like, hi, this is from Serenity, and we're gonna help you. He was like, are you okay? Like, where are you now? And I just broke down, like I completely broke down, and I was like, I don't know what to do, I don't know where to go.
That makes me feel teary just thinking about somebody saying the word, somebody saying to the words, will help you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and
that's so powerful.
He knew that me reaching out was just me asking for help, and up to that point I hadn't asked anyone.
Yeah. What made you, by the way, what made you Google Thailand and not London, or did you just? I wanted
a palm tree. I wanted sunshine, and still in my head, I was thinking it would just be a retreat.
Okay.
Like
I
wanted to go somewhere nice. Like the addict in me was like, you could get a free holiday.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I think there was part of me that was like, I need help. I'm desperate. I need help. But there was also part of me that the addict was still going, you could just get away and pull the wool over everyone's eyes and no one will know, and then you could go, you could even have a beer on the beach, like, you know?
Ah, okay, that's interesting.
By the end of my addiction, it's kind of important to say that by the end of active addiction, I had become two people.
Okay.
Like, that's literally how I felt. I felt split into these two, and these two people felt so far apart. And so I didn't know who I was.
Right.
I felt so lost in identity. Like, I just had no idea who I was. There was this addict that was loud and obnoxious and running around, you know, thought he was amazing and wanted to go on holiday to Thailand and lie to everyone and say he was, you know, going to a rehab as a holiday. And then there was this broken me who didn't want to talk to anyone, didn't want to see anyone, total introvert, needed help, was just this kind of isolated mess of a human. And I just didn't know who I was. And it was like I would go on a binge and use and drink and be this addict and then I would be on a come down for a week and be this completely different person.
Yeah.
And I would be like, who was that person that week ago? Like,
Yeah,
it was
it's such
total
extremes,
Jekyll and
isn't it?
Hyde.
Yeah.
I was like, I couldn't even recognise that. If I saw a video or a picture back, I couldn't even recognise who that was.
Right.
I was like, I do not know who that person is. So, you know, my life felt so threatened because I just did not know who I was.
Right.
There's kind of a window when an addict wants to go.
Okay.
You need to, like, get them to go right then.
Right.
Because the addict brain will kick in, and before we know it, we're
You
like,
just go,
I'm fine, I'm okay,
yeah.
I don't need that shit, you know?
Yeah.
So it's super sad when I said goodbye to my parents because it was not nice. There was no, like, you know, loving send off because I was a horror.
Right.
I was just an absolute monster.
Right.
I was there on a scholarship room, you know, like
Yeah.
I was lucky to be there with these, surrounded by people that were helping me, but I just couldn't see it. I
Yeah.
just could not see it. So my only option was to like end it. I was like, I don't know.
Did you hear those words when she said to you, "You're not going to survive"? Did that land
Oh
with
yeah,
you?
I
Did
knew.
you? Did
By,
you hear it?
At this point, I didn't want to survive.
Okay.
Looking back, I think that that relapse was a test of myself. Am I really an addict? Surely I can't be.
Yeah.
Oh shit, I am.
I am. Yeah.
Also, it was. I needed to start recovery in that place of just utter surrender, of just complete and utter brokenness.
Yeah.
And just rather than leaving a trail of disaster, I was leaving a trail of happy people.
Yeah.
And I've been able to go back to those jobs, which is something I could never do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So over the past 3 years, I've been able to call up and be like, hey, I'm free, like, and they're like, brilliant, come back. Like,
Wow.
you know, that wasn't ever an option before.
Yeah. So for the first time since you were 14, well, 3 years in now, do you like the person you are now that you can actually get to know yourself and see yourself without any external layers or camouflage or